Hello, survivors, and welcome to a moment of relief. This is going to be a very different episode with myself, Bergs, and Amy Dezura, a former community manager for the Adventurers League, which is an organized play system for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. We hung out and spoke about D&D and tabletop RPGs in general. We hope you enjoy.
Right off the top of the gate, let's talk about which one of your thinking about D&D. It's a very meaningful thing. Dig in to each of us for our own reasons. What was the thing? What's your core memory about what makes D&D really, really great to you?
Okay, me. I think my core memory isn't actually when I played D&D at all. It's when I discovered that D&D was a thing. And that was back in 1997. All the way back then, when I was very young, and I discovered a game called Baldur's Gate, which was based on AD&D, and I had a family, like my family that I had at that time, used to play AD&D, and I wasn't allowed to play because we had a very Christian family, and it was not, and I would be told, don't tell your grandparents that we're playing. and then Baldur's Gate came out, and I was like, I don't need to play AD&D. I have it right here, And I was fortunate enough that my guardian had a PC that I could play it on, and it had like 8 discs, and with every act you'd have to switch a disc out, and you'd have to be very careful about not scratching the disc.
Floppy disks or CDs?
No, CDs, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
CDs. Weird. Yeah, full CDs. The actual booklet was so nice. It was really thick. It was like a green book, I think, floral design on it. It was beautiful. But yeah, you'd have to switch constantly, and sometimes it wouldn't work because technology was bad back then.
Nice.
And yeah, and I got to know what Thacker was, unfortunately, and and how roles worked, and then skip 15 years. I went through like a Halo period during that time, and then a whole bunch of other stuff and hobbies, and I was trying to find myself because it was in my early 20s, and then I got to the early 2010s, and then I just said, I love D&D and I love fantasy. Let's stop playing these single-player RPG. Well, let's not stop playing them, but let's also play Dungeons and Dragons. So I started to try and find players. Couldn't find them, so I became a dungeon master, and then everybody flocked to me.
Yeah.
Incidentally, that's how you make a friend.
Amy, how you feeling? You got one?
Yeah. I found D&D because my husband and I wanted to make friends in our new city. And seeing as I'm here on this program with you, it appears to have worked. But I remember we went to a gaming convention, and you always sort of hear about Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't play until I was in my early 30s. So that was 2015. It wasn't that long ago. I feel like an infant compared to a lot of people who've been playing since the beginning of time. But my husband and I sat down for like a 2 or a 4 hour game on a Friday night at a gaming convention. I'm a barbarian. They make it easier for the new kids. Here's the stick, you hit things with it. And I think I got eaten by like a dire toad, and I had giant badgers fall on me, and I was hooked. Like, this is amazing. So I just remember that joy. Like, this was an amazing time, and when can we do this again? And that's what I want everyone to have. Like, just that looking forward to having a good time with people. So
yeah, that's what it's about.
That moment of, this isn't the character that I always want to be, but this was a really good time.
Mm-hmm.
What was yours, Bergs?
Actually, my D&D core memory actually involves Amy as part of this one. Amy was in one of my first long ever campaigns that we ran, and I was on first time I'd done it on Roll20, and it was a good group. We had a fun group of people from our local community. There's a scene, I don't remember exactly which module it was, but there was a scene that I, as a DM, was building that they were just supposed to like leave the orcs alone and not harass these orcs. So like in order to dissuade them, I indicated the orcs weren't hostile, they weren't looking to start a fight, they were actively celebrating. One of my players could speak the language and learned that they were celebrating. It was what was his name? Tuk Tuk, I think it was. It was his last day before orc retirement. He had raided his last village. And he was about to pack it in and go home and raise and be a family man. And I set this just to move on. And that's the whole. There's nothing here. There's no treasure. Like it's just. And then the party at that moment goes, "Yeah, we're gonna kill all these orcs."
Did he have a photo in his orc wallet of his orc family?
Oh, totally.
That we discovered after his orc death. Yes.
And the family swore vengeance, and so throughout the rest of that campaign, we peppered in like children and siblings and the spouse of this Zug the orc. That was his name.
Zug, classic.
Zug. And to me, that's an important memory to me in D&D, because it like is that moment of just general like surprise, and then that yes and making it work. And not only is that like fun thematically, but it enabled us as a group to find a flavor for the whole campaign, because we took a turn at that point that we were the Power Rangers, Team Badger. And that was that was such a fun campaign. And that again, like it's what I want everybody to have when they think about this game. Like you find the fun, and it's a playground in addition to storytelling medium and a collaboration medium. It's just
you want people to go away and speak to their non-D&D friends and say, "You won't believe what I just did this weekend."
Yeah.
And then you say it to them, and their faces are just like blank. What did you do? I rolled dice, and crazy things happened.
There was a dragon and a fireball. Oh my goodness! You would not believe
we nearly died.
Nearly died. Fallen into a pit trap. D&D is a game, right? It's a playground. We've talked a bit about that. We've talked a bit about our core memories when we're talking about playing the game, right? I know we've all have our favorite class archetypes, right?
Yeah, mine changes by monthly. I feel like
based on how the winds are blowing that day.
Yeah.
I have a couple different ones depending on. I have like a mainstay of a few that if I'm going to sit down at a table, I prefer playing. Honestly, it's no surprise to James because I've been playing a bunch of D&D with James recently. Paladin is probably my number one. I just think that how they play is so cool, and I think their flavor of combat and how they use their tools at their disposal is like. To me, I think it is in terms of frontline fighters. I think they're some of the most fun you can have playing the game, just because you've got so many tools and you're going to do a bunch of damage. You can spec in a couple of different ways where you can like mitigate damage on somebody else, force enemies to attack you, like as heal like a substantial degree. You can heal a bunch all in a go. Amy, favorite D&D character, class archetype.
I am a druid through and through. In my real life, I try to boop all of the dog snoots that I can, and I make friends with cats even though I'm allergic to them. So being able to, be a Disney princess and have, animal companions, or turn into a big angry bear, or it's just it's like having your own personal menagerie. It's amazing, and Sometimes you turn into an adorable sneaky badger, and sometimes you are a very angry wolf, and just the finding the tools and the animal that suits the needs. Uh, Talking to birds, getting the scoop on what's going on by talking to the creatures is just very Snow White, and I'm here for it.
James, well, what are we this
Well,
month?
before before I go into what I like, I want to know what your core memories are of each archetype, actually. So, like, Amy, is there like a core memory for druid that got you hooked on being a druid in the first place?
My first long-term DM was a very yes and very let's go along with this nonsense and see what happens DM. And so when I learned to conjure animals and I learned that I could conjure like 8 or a dozen badgers at once, that just became my shtick. And
The Badger
he
Brigade.
yes, he actually found for me like little badger. I think they were like Pathfinder, like stand up cards,
The
little
Pathfinder
minis.
Pawns box. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had I had a bunch of badgers rolling around in my dice bag with my dice, and it was just like, we're fighting a dozen skeletons, and each badger gets a skeleton, and so here we are over here. My badgers are over there causing chaos, and it worked out. I was very pleased with myself.
Yeah,
I don't know
That sounds
how much of
amazing.
it was, in the rules. I don't know how much of it aligned, but it was a really good time.
Yeah, there's the rule cool there, isn't there? Like, in terms of. Yeah, what's yours, Berger? Like with paladins?
Like paladins are so there's a scene I recall. The amount of like hit point swing a paladin can create in a single turn, even at like level 5, is absurd.
Yeah.
Because they can roll up to an area and deal 2 like devastating smites. Actually, you can only do 1. And then also like lay on hands somebody for 30 hit points, and then completely change like how stuff is going on. In this example, I had a character who was an Oath of Glory paladin, and they give a aura of alacrity as the paladin aura, so that you get plus 10 more feet of movement if you start your turn within 5 feet of the paladin. And I was at a point where somebody could end their turn in my space, and if I survived until their next turn, they could go up and then just finish the fight. So Edrin, as my character's Edrin, shielded, 20 AC at level 5 is not a lot, but when you're taking, crossbow shots from like
Did you say
12
that's not
goblins.
A lot? 20 AC at level 5 is not a lot.
Not that much.
Go talk to the wizard and see what
they've got. That's a lot. Come on.
Well, it was still not enough because I actually went down and took a hit while I was down. But I was able to stabilize, get stabilized. So like I was able to be valid for the other person to go up there and get the boss with a dash sneak attack. Because when your rogue is quick action dashing, that's an additional, like they're just zooming off, and that's and I was there to also make sure that the rogue was topped up before they left, and as serving as just a general like keystone waypoint to initiate the fight.
A checkpoint that they can get to.
Just stop here, get topped up,
can
and
we
go
get to
on.
Edrin? Great, the battle's won.
Right, and I think that there's something to be said about a character that is built to do that as part of the character's theming and concept of just being there to provide that push.
Yeah, I love that.
Druid, what's your core memory? And you got out of telling us your classwork by distracting us with core memories.
It does change all the time. It's between two, and I'm not even gonna. Right now there is a favorite, but it just changes every week and month, and that's Druid and Wizards. I have very clear core memories of both of them. I have several. I think with Druids, it was I was playing a mute Druid, Moon Druid, who basically expressed himself through turning into beasts. So if he was angry, he would turn into a bear. If he wanted to be sneaky, he would turn into a spider. If he was trying to shy away, he would turn into a squirrel. And stuff like that. Did you have something to say, Bugs?
I just have a question about Druid density. Wow, shapeshifted. Could somebody just thwack the spider and then smoosh you?
They will take your HP down to 0, and then you just sprout up with your current HP, or any that took over. So they could potentially kill you. But if you have, that's why Druids have potentially the highest HP of any class, because you could turn into quite, especially at high levels, really big things with a lot of HP. But my core memory with Riley, that was his name. He was a dwarf without a beard, and he was very cute, and I played him as very cute and stuff. But my core memory with him is when I said to my DM, "You said there was a hole in that ogre, right? Someone blew a hole through that ogre that was still alive, right?" And they said, "Yes, James, I'm always pulling weird stuff like this, right?" And she says to me, "What are you trying to get at?" "You'll see next turn." Gets to my turn, and I use my entire turn to. I'm a dwarf, so I jump into the hole. With my athletics, I climb inside, and then I turn into a bear. Bleep! I have to bleep that out. Damn it.
Yeah.
But typically that wouldn't be allowed in the rules, because your beast shape, you can only turn into something when the size allows it, right? But because it was such a cool moment, and the ogre was dying anyway, she allowed it, right? And so the ogre, I exploded into a bear, and the ogre exploded outwards. And there was no so that was that. When it comes to Wizards, I have so many cool things with Wizards, because they can do so many cool things. But the thing, just because Bergs is here, and I like to bully them about it. I used to play a character in their campaign called Faye Belnades.
Yeah. Curse of Castlevania.
Who was based on... He was the brother of Cypher Belnades from Castlevania, and he was a pacifist wizard. He didn't like to hit things, right? But he would buff and debuff everybody. And one thing I loved to use was sleep. And I used to... the party didn't quite get it at first, but they got the handle of it eventually, and basically they would let me go in, cast sleep on the enemy, and at least one or two of them would fall asleep. Then we had a rogue who would go in stealthily and just get an auto crit. That's one dead, right? And then another one would die. Until eventually...
These people turned into SEAL Team 6.
Until eventually Faye... I said to Bugger, it was like an end game demon god thing that we were facing against, and I kept on saying to Bugger, "How bad does it look?" I kept on saying this throughout the entire combat, and Bugger wouldn't say. They were very I don't want to say how bad it looks, because I know what you're trying to do, right? And I was like, "Please, can I make a check? I'll just not do anything this turn, and I'll make a check," right? and they let me do it.
Like,
And then
yeah,
the next turn, you said they were very badly injured. I said I'm using
Right.
it like I think it was like a fifth or sixth level sleep on this guy.
It was like the one spell of that level that he had that day, and I was not.
I was like, well, and I sent this godly figure to sleep,
He did.
and I was like, that's me, I'm done.
That was another very fun campaign that like as a DM I really had to escalate the problem
Yeah.
because we were having we had a death domain cleric. We had you as a seeker wizard subclass. We had the Dampier fighter who was doing the vampire hunter subclass. We had a rogue, didn't we? But they just got so good at picking stuff off that James would just incapacitate or
Paralyze or just
paralyze.
keep them. I didn't want them because I was a pacifist both ways. I didn't want them to hit my people, and I didn't want to hit anybody because that wasn't the Seeker way. I just didn't want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
James was a delightful collaborator on that campaign. I messed with the players a lot. It was a lot of fun. It's one of the things I thought was interesting because when we used Roll20, it hadn't had all of the cool widgets that it has now when we did our campaign, and like now it has a lot of like really neat extra stuff to do while you're just with it. Like there's dynamic lighting. It's real-time dynamic lighting now too. It used to be it would update when you placed your mini. But in this campaign, I really messed with it a lot because I subscribed to a map person on Patreon who would do seasonal, like you do a map for the month, and he would have, here's this map in the winter, here's this map at night, here's this map with like detritus, here's this map without it. So I had one Crossroads that I just had 6 versions of.
You just switch, wouldn't you?
And I would just switch them from one. It would be rotated. It would be backwards, nighttime. It was just the same single tile. And I had it set up for each one had different triggers and different traps because it would reset each time you didn't get the puzzle correctly.
We were very frustrated, Amy. Like
That's amazing.
I think we were on it for like 3 weeks.
We got stuck in the Konami. We got stuck in the Kantara forest for a long time.
Yeah, until eventually we realized how it worked, and we just kicked ourselves.
They remembered the Konami chant.
Yeah.
So
So
it's similar to the original Zelda, where if you don't know the exact way to get through that, you have to go, like up and left and over, and otherwise you just end up back at the beginning.
Yeah, that was it was very much the Lost Forest moment.
hated it.
That's my core DM memory. The moment they figured that out was to me because they were like they swore at me across the table.
Yeah, we were so mad.
They were so mad at me, but they were all laughing their asses off.
Yeah, it was very smart though because we didn't recognize it, and that's the thing about D&D is that like it's like yesterday we played, like Berger and I played D&D. I just started a new campaign. It's based on Candlekeep Mysteries, and the stuff that was released with that, and I'm building it into my own world. And yeah, there was in that game there was stuff like that too, wasn't there? Like that was happening all the time. You guys. These guys were so. I was so proud of them yesterday because I thought we were going to start and it was just going to be an absolute
4-hour slog. You've done those long single sessions.
I have. Right? Yeah, they could be. You have and there's nothing wrong with it. But if you have a player full of reserved players, if you have a party full of reserved players, it can be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to draw people out of their shell sometimes, especially if you have a new character. Like for me, I don't know who a character is until I play them for a little bit. I have to learn their personality,
Mm.
to figure out what their quirks are, versus some players come in with all that backstory and their motivation and their accent, and it's just on that spectrum of where people are and their comfort and their players or their characters. So I am absolutely that person who's reserved at a table until I figure out, what's my angle here.
Yeah.
So that's one of the great things about D&D is there's so many different approaches. You can have the SEAL Team 6 style of campaign or session, or you can have the sort of like Benny Hill, everything's chaos but nothing
Chaos.
works. So just on that, you could take it super serious, or you could take it not at all serious, and everything in between.
And none of those
Great.
things is wrong as
Right,
well.
exactly.
Absolutely.
So when I'm at a table, I recognize that, and having played on both sides of the proverbial fence there, when I'm at a table, and you read the room, you read the vibe, and you kind of want to help at least make that experience less bad for the DM. I try to take on a role at a table of like get other people facilitated, engage this person, pull this person in. Oh, hey, that's a good question to ask maybe our rogue about sneaking.
Mm.
And I certainly have a type with my characters where I at the very least I generally make them pretty charismatic, at least interpersonally, just because it makes sense for them to want to chat with people and pull people up. And so when I'm at a table, I'm generally like that's me.
Yeah,
And,
that's fair.
uh,
Just some things don't vibe with you. Like I've even had people, and actually I say some people. I've had a lot of people who, because I DM for people every week, and
Mhm.
different people all the time, and I've even had people say, I don't think D&D is for me.
yeah.
And the whole thing is not for them, and I'm like, well, don't discount tabletop RPGs.
Sure.
It might be D&D that is not gelling with you. And that could bring us to another subject as well.
Yeah,
that we have down here, which is other.
multiple RPG systems.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a big field out there. D&D got a lot of people playing tabletop RPGs, and a lot of other companies took notice. So there's so much tabletop RPG content that's available
Very
to the general
overwhelming.
person right now.
Yeah.
If you have a thing that you like a little bit, there's a tabletop RPG with rules
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Are there any other tabletop RPGs that you've tried and very much enjoyed that you probably likely would have only seen or thought about because of your time with D&D?
Yeah. Recently, actually, past 6 months, I played, and I just met them actually at MCon in Nottingham. There are Twosome who have created an RPG system called Shiver, which is based on basically 80s and 90s horror tropes. There is a time, it's meant to be played in an hour and a half, but it's a tabletop RPG. Things go a little bit awry. But there's a timer, and you get to certain points, and if you get to an hour and a half in the game, that's the end of the game. And if you haven't done your goal, then it's game over. This particular game I played, it's pretty cool. So you can make a character, and you can be all kinds of things. You would have these set, in D&D was set character. I was a traveling father, a priest, who was selling God to people. We were all traveling salesmen, and we got blown off the road by some scary scarecrow man, and it was basically Catcher in the Rye. And yeah, we were being chased throughout the entire thing. So many weird things happened. I knocked him out with a Bible at one point. It was it was a time. But yeah, that was great. It has its own dice and stuff. I really do recommend Shiver. Again, it's just two guys who work on this, and I saw them at MCon again. It was lovely to see them, and I really do recommend it. We should probably give them a shout out in the tweet as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Amy? Any other RPG
I
systems?
have a couple of favorites. One of them I think is still based on 5th edition D&D, but it's a little different. It's called Animal Adventures. Going back to my
Yes.
druid
Animal
all the
Adventures is so
dogs,
much fun.
personality. Like, I was a dog. We were all dogs. We were all different kinds of dogs, and each had our own, abilities. And I was like, this is a delight. We were
Yeah.
pirate dogs, I think, for a couple of sessions. But my big favorite has been Cyberpunk Red. I've been playing that recently since it came out. I think late 2020, I think.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to get used to only playing with D10s and D6s instead of all of the dice. So there was a running joke in my group for a while that's like, Amy, you roll the D10 instead of the D20. How did you get your number so high?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun, especially like it has a mechanic where if you roll a 10, your dice explode and you get to roll again and you do better, and like it can compound upon itself. But at the same time, if you roll very poorly, it'll start to detract from how well you might have been doing, and it just, you fail spectacularly. But playing in a futuristic dystopian world where everything's miserable and cybernetic, and it's very different from playing, say, your typical fantasy-based TTRPG. It's a nice change of pace. It's a little grittier, and you get to explore different aspects of a character that you might create and a story you might tell.
Really cool.
Yeah. I actually have another one. Actually, you just reminded me of
Okay.
Alien RPG. I can't believe I didn't say
Okay.
that. Has a similar system where if you succeed a lot, you will be rewarded, but if you do not, it's only a D6 system. You will be punished with a stress system. But yeah, that's another one.
I got a couple that I very, very, very much enjoy. The first one is called 10 Candles,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
a very fun little 10 Candles is a single session RPG. It doesn't require 10 people. But in it, each game is the understanding that the whole game is going to wrap up in a single session. At the start of it, you record your character. You very simple character creation process, and you record your character's final words, and then you progress through the story. There's you roll dice to succeed or fail checks that a storyteller is managing. And each time you fail, the number of dice that you take away corresponds to the number of candles that that go out. If you accidentally blow out a candle, you take a die away. So the number of candles indicates the amount of remaining rounds of gameplay effectively you have until your character ultimately dies and the story concludes. Or doesn't, because in the one we had, ours was themed on the thing that we played, and the ending was yes, you died, but just like in the movie, it was left ambiguous at the end, which was a lot of fun. 10 Candles, very, very fun little thematic internal RPG. I also like Starfinder a whole lot. I think Starfinder is a lot of fun, talking about the system that's very similar to 5e, closer to 5e than Pathfinder 2e ended up being. But Space Adventures, it's for me. The ship-to-ship combat in the game really wasn't, but we played this years and years ago at this point, and I liked it at the time enough that I still remember my effectively it was the Jedi. I was one of the Jedi characters. I had a special sword and special armor, and I was like a member of the army. That his backstory was that he uh, lied about surviving a great battle, when in reality he was hiding the whole time.
Ooh,
And that
drama.
was that was his Pathfinder character drama, because like you are a Starfinder in the society of Starfinders and go out, and that's like the premise of that game. That would be my other my other tabletop RPG recommendation.
I think, like, as you said earlier on, Bergs, like D&D has opened so many people up to these things, and I was, because my brain can't really absorb a lot of things at the same time. Like D&D, I know extremely well. I know its lore very well, simply because I basically grew up with that world. But over the years, and slowly we're given these games and made to come to games and play them, I've come to realize that there's so much more to give in the tabletop RPG scape. Because you can tell any story that you have in D&D, you could tell in any other RPG essentially.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
It's just a matter of like consolidate, like
Yeah.
it's just a matter of reconciling that mechanically, right?
I mean, like the D&D 5th edition system is so good. I mean, I've done crossovers like all the time. I've done Alien crossovers, I've done Disney El Dorado crossovers, I've done
Castlevania crossovers.
yeah, Castlevania crossovers. I mean, DMing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a ton of crossover, and they go all about which place, everywhere. And I absolutely adore doing it. And I even like homebrew my own games now. Like, I think you get to a certain point where there's just some things in 5e that don't really work that great, like crits, for instance.
What's wrong with how crits function in 5e?
If you have a great sword and you crit and you roll 2 1s,
oh,
it's bad news. So I've taken from a previous edition, for instance, 4th edition. Everybody hates that edition, but I like that crit system. They've just kind of tweaked it a little bit. Like, you can change things however you want, however you want to change it. And again, that's the famous words of none of it is wrong.
right.
Some of it might not work. Some of it might work better than other things. But whatever you're doing it for, it works for you. If it works for you, then it should be fine.
Let's talk about. We've talked a lot about how we've engaged with D&D, and about how impactful it's been to us. I want to take a moment to highlight the impact the current state of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons had on like the community as a whole. Dungeons and Dragons is a much friendlier place now than it used to be. Rather, I would say go so far as to say tabletop gaming in general is much friendlier now than it was. Beyond just Dungeons and Dragons, it goes to show the amount of work that a lot of companies are putting into kind of cultivating a time, like cultivating away the old guard and the old feedback in regards to their community cultivation practices. And definitely here for that.
100%.
What has y'all's experience been with the silly question I asked Amy, because I know she has a lot of feelings on the community of more Dungeons and Dragons.
More, it's a lot. It's better than it used to be.
Yeah,
but it's still a mixed bag,
Still a way
and
to go.
Yes, and
Yeah.
a lot of my experience comes from in-person events, and so that's completely different than when you can sort of like if you join a server that's aimed for certain types of role play or groups of people, like you can sort of on the internet you have the ability to sort of curate your experience. You put that time in, but if you show up to a game shop, or if you show up to like say a gaming convention like PAX Unplugged, like you don't necessarily know what you're gonna get when you sit down at a table with a bunch of strangers. And that's where all of my anxiety lives in my chest, is like, what is this table going to be like? because I've been both a new player and I've been someone who's teaching D&D, and there's still some attitude from, say, we'll call them the old guard. I recently was teaching I learned to play 5th edition session at PAX Unplugged, and I have older players who are coming from older editions of the game, and just that sort of, I'm doing the teaching and you are coming in to my table and telling me that I'm doing it wrong based on what you know from a game from 20
30
years
years
ago.
ago, yeah.
Years ago. And it's like, no, I promise. It's not that I don't know what I'm doing. It's just different from what you're used to. So sometimes there's that, well, I've been doing this longer than you have attitude where it's like, that's not actually right. Those terms don't exist anymore in this edition of the game. Like, let's figure out what you want to do, but translate them to the new rules,
Right.
But there's still some of that, some of those older attitudes still prevail, both towards the game and towards the people who play it.
I bet they couldn't wait to tell you that the last time they played was 30 years ago, or those were the good old days, or stuff like that.
Like,
as
you
well.
sit down. One of my sort of icebreaking questions, I've got a brand new table of 7 people. Like, hey, why are you here? What brought you?
To the
Why
table.
do you want to learn? Yeah, it's like, what got you into it? Were you watching Stranger Things? Do you watch Critical Role online? And just being able to see the number of different things that have brought people to a table, and people that are excited to play, and then there's the guy who's like, well, I've been playing D&D for 30 years, so like, okay, great, we're going to teach you how to play this. And some of them were open-minded and wanted to learn the new things, and some of them just wanted to learn how to do the old things and their things a new way, and that's a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually,
because when I
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. It's actually those people who say the year thing is precisely why I don't say how long I play D&D. Because I think as soon as you say something like that, it's a huge anxiety bomb. Like, on the table. Like, it's like, well, immediately you're trying to put yourself as the alpha of the table. Like, you're saying you have the experience here, when, as you said, they clearly do not.
Right. That's definitely a bit of a struggle to deal with as a dungeon master. I will absolutely agree. And share. Yeah, I'm a yes and sort of dungeon master when I'm playing. I like to see where I like to follow. I like to let my players kill the goblin they're not supposed to kill, and find out what happens when my wizard keeps sleeping all of my monsters. I just spawn more monsters.
That's me.
So when I say that, I don't mind a problem player. Or problem situations is what I mean to say. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. When I have a problem player, which is to say somebody who's just more insistent on doing the things they want to do than playing the game with other people. That's my community struggle. I had a player at one point who I used to say that when I was playing games, I would hate the sound when you're doing games online with people and there's no cameras involved, and every time you say, oh, hey person, it's your turn, you hear the sound of their phone hitting the table before they start talking.
Yeah.
That would be my thing. But in terms of how many people are at that table, like you said, 7 new people at a new person's game. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. And having been at that particular convention, there were probably 20, 30 other tables that were just as packed, doing the exact same thing.
100%. But it's, to me, I love teaching new players. Like, that's my jam.
So cool. Yeah.
Like, if y'all are experienced DMs and you want to take those high-level players with all their shenanigans and stuff, you can have them. Give me a newbie. I'll teach them how to use their sticks. Uh,
But
that's my
my
happy place.
I'm
Yeah.
exactly the same. The reason why I love new players is because they always think of something you weren't thinking
Yeah.
about. Like they always go, but can I do that? As soon as I hear that question, right, it makes me light
Yes, it
up in my
ends.
brain, right? I'm like, well, technically no, but let's see what the dice say. In my head, that's what's going through, and I'll go, you do the kind of the Matt Mercer thing or whatever. You can try it if you want. We'll see what happens. I love it I love being asked questions too. Like
Yeah.
when you're in a game and like, because that's when you get those questions, you've won the trust of the player
Mhm.
in a way because they're listening to you, like attentiveness. I realize now, we'll get onto it a little bit later, but I realize now, phones are a big part of D&D, and also that it's a fidget thing sometimes people have, and I do it as well. I sit there and just doodle on my notepad sometimes and stuff like that. But you always know the attentive people when you turn to somebody and say, so what are you doing? And they go, huh? And they just double take you, and then you have to sit there for the next 2 minutes going over what just happened. I do have players though that take care of that sometimes, and they will turn it into a role play experience, which I also really appreciate.
Yeah.
Players who help you out as a DM, they realize that you have a million things going through your brain, so they sit there and say, I'll take care of this. So this is what happened. It gets them involved and immersed into the game. They're not just looking at you as this referee, person. They'll see you as the referee of fun and the
Yeah.
the
I like
guardian
that.
of the
Referee
game.
of fun. My favorite moment for new people is when that thing they wanted to try works.
Hmm.
Like when somebody for the first time does a cool thing with their toy. Ah, it makes me so happy. The first time somebody rolls a crit,
Oh
and like,
yeah.
wait, oh, I get more. Um, uh,
Yeah.
When I got my spouse to play D&D once, and he played a rogue, which is here, have more dice to roll on your attacks. And that was again her favorite. Is like, oh, that was the response. It was like, oh, I get more if yeah, you do. Here you go. And then straight rolling all those dice. It's the same thing with like I think any game. In terms of as a universal like game language, teaching somebody how to play something and then hindering their opportunities to play with their cool toy. Like, when your thing works, it feels great, right? But also managing when it doesn't work out, you have to deal with that. Like, to me, I think that's the like the bit with trying to keep energy at a new table when a player's like, oh, they get their second attack in, like, oh, we missed again. Oh, you needed a 13, huh? Oh, that's and as DMs, we should like in that. And so for me, in that second attack, they'd have just made it, um, which is an interest. You're thinking about talking about the guardian of the game, integrity of the fun. That's the kind of calls that you make at newbie tables. Beat me
I
at the game on your first try,
yeah.
please.
I have this thing, and Bergen knows about it, but I have this thing I call them my nemesis, and that is power DMs. They're people who I used to run a Facebook group where I used to do 5-6 one-shots a week and campaigns and stuff, and I used to have a DM who loved killing players. That was the thing they loved doing, and I was like, I didn't criticize because like that's your way of playing, and there used to be new players who used to go into their games, and I used to think, oh man, you're gonna hate D&D. You go into
Yeah.
that game, you're gonna hate it. You're gonna go to your friends and get, no, it wasn't for me. I always used to kind of scoop them up. No, come to my game. I
Come
won't
here,
kill.
baby bird.
I won't
Let
kill
me-
you. I promise. I mean, death happens. It can happen. I made a tweet about it a few weeks ago, but I always give my players a choice. And that's the big thing, is the agency there. Like, I mean, first time it ever happened, all those years ago, to a player, I took the player, I'm as distraught as they are. I take him back to the back room, we take a break, and I say, okay, I'm going to give you two choices. You can either keep this character and we can figure something out, right? Or you can roll another character. Right, it's up to you. Whatever you want to do, we'll figure it out. I promise. And since then, that's what I've just been doing. But other DMs, they do that ripping up of character sheets thing and stuff. It's like, that's so toxic. that's a memory there. That's a sentimental thing.
Right. It's
for people
time,
to keep.
energy, and piece of somebody's themselves that they put into creation for that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I literally cried the first time my character died.
Oh.
With the first time I had a permanent character death.
no
I was
way.
way home. It was just so because we'd been playing through the Curse of Strahd series of the organized play adventures. It was the final adventure. And I had a notebook full of clues and hints, and it's a very linear storyline. You get to that final battle and it doesn't work. And I was, because you spend so much time and you've bonded with those characters that you've been playing for a while, and I was just like, oh no, it's real, and it's just a game, but it's real, and you have that visceral reaction to losing a character. Luckily, my sheet didn't get torn up, but she's safely tucked in a drawer somewhere.
The risk is there. Like they're not released yet, but I made a bunch of blog posts about kind of D&D, and like one of my things was the risk versus fun factor. You need to have that risk there. It needs to be a thing that's there because that's what makes it fun. Sometimes, when I feel like the players are having a little bit too easy of a time, I'll sneak a natural 20 in there, just to, shake things up a little bit. But I don't do it often. Because I feel like the math is good in 5e, where it happens just enough. But yeah, and then sometimes if, the monsters are doing too well and I roll a natural 20, I'll say it's a 5 as well.
Right.
You
you have to keep the game engaging and fun for everybody involved. Community is such that it has spawned not only a creative renaissance within the tabletop RPG space, but also a technological renaissance. What are your all's thoughts on D&D as a service in terms of, there's D&D Beyond, there's, a DMs on demand, or the organized play that's set up to encourage folks to give people new tools to play the game. Do you think that having digital tools detract at all from the gameplay experience?
I think it's kind of magic, honestly. Like the way that the technology has evolved, especially through the pandemic. As working in organized play, to see all of the stores and the convention shut down immediately, have no idea, when everything would open back up, and being able to tell your communities, okay, this is what a Discord server is. This is how you can continue, this is the technology available to you. There's Roll20, there's, you can do it without maps. You can do it just on voice chat. I think it's good for getting people who maybe don't want to take that, that step and go to a game store, go to a convention, or maybe you want to get to know somebody a little bit better. Maybe you just want to do play by post, in a Discord server. But I think there's almost like where like too much of a good thing becomes like terrible sometimes, like when D&D server or with D&D Beyond servers go down and you can't access your character sheet in the middle of a game session when you're at a table, like I I'm still a pen and paper kind of person. I have my character sheet, I have my dice, but more than half of our table at our weekly game uses D&D Beyond for their character sheets. It's easy, it's quick,
Yeah.
but if those servers go down, then we're improvising, which is
Right.
also fun. And I do appreciate, there's the services where you can sign up for a game. There are professional DMs who will run a game for you and some friends or some strangers, whenever you want. And being based across, multiple time zones, maybe your work schedule says that you only get to play at, 9 o'clock in the morning, but that's 3 p.m., 6 hours from where you are, or 6 time zones away. So maybe there's someone available, So I think it's blessings and curses all over the place.
It was very hard for me when D&D Beyond first came out. God, I looked at that and just looked at it as if it was the Holy Grail to me, because I had so many people who were just like, I just don't like doing the math, and I also know a couple of people who have dyscalculia, so that's a huge thing, like a huge barrier, and I'm like, don't worry, like if I just say
Just
the
click
thing,
the button.
just click the button, you don't need to even look at the numbers, it's fine. That and just the accessibility of it. Going a little bit back to kind of the community for a second, I remember someone on, again, it's always on Twitter, just people being weird, but there was someone, I was just lauding over D&D 5th edition and D&D Beyond about how accessible it is and how easy it is to get into a game, like you were saying, Amy, and like finding people is very easy too. And I remember some person saying, accessible, it's the most inaccessible TTRPG. I went, Daenerys Targaryen face, like, what do you mean? Because anybody could play. In fact, I can put you in one of my games right now, if you wanted to play with me. But yeah, I loved it. Like, but unfortunately, during that time, we had a lot of people who, again, the old guard, who were like, I'm pen and paper only, and it became a problem because they were bringing their things and numbers weren't working out and things like that. And I was like, if you go on D&D Beyond, you can still have your sheet there if you want, because I understand. I do initiative and notes and everything. That's all on paper for me. Like, I have to because it's quicker for me and it feels more natural, right? You can have both. Just have both there so it's easier for you, right? It means I can look at your character too very easily, right? And I can change things and I can even give you little gifts sometimes that you won't see what's coming, yeah, it changed everything for me. And in fact, D&D Beyond inspired me to do what I do now, which I'll talk more about at the end of the show. Yeah, it's just made it so accessible and lovely and easy to work with.
I love it. I have never hidden the fact that much I appreciate and I love the online D&D tools that are available to us. Not just D&D Beyond, but the what do they call it?
5e tools.
The 5e tools is just such a wonder. Have you heard of 5e tools, Amy?
It's ringing some bells in my brain, but
it's just
you can
a simple
elaborate.
suite of digital online tools. The one I like to use a lot is like a DM screen, and it's just a bunch of panels that are just about yay big on your screen, and you can assign them to be whatever you want. It links to the VTT you're using. So if you click on the ghoul, it'll populate on your DM screen, it'll populate a ghoul's initiative in the game on the VTT.
It's and I'm going to be critical of D&D Beyond here. They should hire the people who are working at 5e.tools because they have really bad DM tools on D&D Beyond, right? Whereas 5e.tools has honestly carried me in terms of a DM, like with its tools and how the things you can do with it. So I really, one day, I hope that D&D Beyond will take some of those tools over.
So one of the things I did when I did Curse of Castlevania was I had those panels visible on the stream. So people watching the stream could see the DM screen, see behind the DM screen, and what was happening and what was coming up for the players. which I thought would be fun for people to be able to enjoy along
It
with
was
me.
when I was looking back at it. It was cool. I liked it.
Because I mean, I get that the information's always there, and we did have the tracker. D&D Beyond's tracker is for the one that they have for Twitch. The integrated HP tracker is dope. But like you said, in terms of just general like game tracking, the initiative tracker that's on the 5e tools is just way better than any of the tools available anywhere else.
So good. Like if you're against a dragon, right, and you don't have enough d6s, for instance, and you have to roll like 18 d6s, right? You go on 5e.tools, you just click 18 d6. It's in the ability, like it's in there, and it rolls it for you.
It has a function to scale like you input the character levels for all the people and then scale the encounter to that appropriate challenge rating, like
so
automatically as part of the math. It's dope. Online tools, DMs as a service, are really fantastic as well, providing games to people who might not normally have access to a consistent gaming experience.
And there's there's also Incarnate, which is what I use as a map making app. Like, it means that I can make maps and feel like an artist.
I mean, be an artist, right? It's still
Yeah,
art.
essentially, it gives you the tools so you can, like, just... I mean, I've learned so much, and I think I've been a part of it for 6 years now. It's not just for D&D, obviously. It's TTRPG. You can put X's on it, grids on it, whatever you want. You know, but it's so good. Only costs me 25 quid a year, and yeah, it's fantastic. That's another kind of D&D service or D&D thing that I pay for to improve my games. Is Incarnate.
Is there a specific online tool that you appreciate a great deal, Amy? You'd like to?
I'd like to give a shout out to Start Playing Games, where that's the DMs as the service, being able to find a game or a DM and like request a game. I've got 4 friends and this is an adventure that we want to play, but none of us wants to DM, so you can hire someone. It's fantastic because honestly, who doesn't want to not DM? We all know that friend who that's all they do because they're the only one who's willing to do it. Yeah. In my instance, it's my husband, and he loves it most of the time. I think he hasn't said he won't do it anymore, but it's nice to be like, okay, we're going to give everyone a chance to play, or if you want to play something before you run it for a different group of friends, you can have that experience of, oh, well, how does this person do it? What would I change? And I think that's one of the biggest things for me as a player is learning from other DMs so that I can borrow their tricks, when I'm running my own table. So, but, being able to say, I'm just a single player, or it's me and my friend, and we don't have a full party, we don't have someone who will DM for us, and using a service to connect with someone who can DM for you online is magic.
Literally is magic at its basis concepts. In this wizard's thesis, I will talk about.
This is this is our D&D TED talk that we're doing right now.
Thank you so much for joining me, to the both of you, Amy especially. Thank you for taking the time. Where can people find you on the internet?
Both on Twitter and Instagram, where I post pictures of my adorable dog. At LADYDZRA, Lady Dezora. That's me. And if you play Stellaris and want to come hang out, I monitor their Twitter account as one of their community ambassadors. So come say hello and tell us how much you love the game, or tell us what you don't like, and I'll tell my bosses.
Stellaris so much.
I just started it last night because I actually wanted to know what the game was all about. And I was very overwhelmed by everything.
You should.
You're not wrong. There's a lot.
Yeah.
We should try the co-op betas. We should try the co-op sometime, James. Apparently, it's much more manageable for people.
Cool.
James, thank you for
Hello.
joining me as well. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Moist Owler OFF on Twitter. You can also find me at Mortal Deeds. And you can also go to mortaldeeds.com, which is where I do a D&D service that we've been talking about, where it's a roguelike progression system where you play a one-shot or a mini adventure, and we have a whole working magic shop and everything that I've been working on, and an app and things, and you can sign up for games. Next Saturday, we have a one-shot setup called, I've forgotten the name, but it's something about ravens and crows and people in sewers. It's very exciting. But yeah, we're currently, all slots are open. So if you want to take part, just go to mortaldeeds.com.
Excellent. And of course, they'll be every Saturday from now until perpetuity because of the nature of how this content gets released. I think that about does it for this episode of A Moment to Relief. I do want to thank both of our guests for joining us. Please, round of applause for both Amy and James. And if you'd like to follow us at First Aid Spray, join us on Patreon, follow us on the YouTubes and the Twitter, all at FA Spray Pod. And I have been Burger. Y'all have been great, and thank you for watching.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye. Bye.